And joining us now is Miri Eisin, Managing Director at Reichman University's International Institute for Counter-Terrorism, former Israeli government spokesperson and retired colonel in the IDF, and Christopher O'Leary, former Director of Hostage Recovery for the United States government. So, Colonel, how do you see this deal being carried out, and what does it mean for Israel's operations in Gaza?
So, first of all, it's very bittersweet. We all want to see all of the hostages, and Raf described that, but you need to understand that in Israel, we are less than 10 million people. There are 240 hostages. Those families don't know who's coming tomorrow. This is a photo op, a very cynical one for Hamas. They've never said who's being led out. So in that sense, tomorrow is something that we all want to see. We're waiting to see who's going to come through. When we look at it right now and talk about the ground operation, you mentioned at the beginning that there are still firing different attacks inside the Gaza Strip. The pause only starts tomorrow. It hasn't started already. One of the reasons that Hamas agreed to this exchange, and it is an exchange, they were not willing to just let out the hostages themselves. One of the reasons that they agreed is because they are under pressure. Now, to stop that pressure is to enable and strengthen Hamas. And there's always going to be that tipping point when you are in this kind of a situation that you don't want to give Hamas the benefit. But if you don't, you're not going to bring back your hostages. So I just want to see tomorrow which babies, which children are going to be coming in those first 10 people.
And Chris, National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan described how carefully choreographed this exchange will have to be over the next couple of days, with a number of hostages and prisoners released every day. Talk to me about the potential hurdles in doing it this way.
Well, I can't point to an example that's as complicated. I mean, you're in Gaza where it's an active war zone. ICRC is going to likely be involved in it. The Red Cross is going to be involved in escorting the hostages out. But Hamas is a terrorist organization. ICRC doesn't normally get involved in these kind of situations. So it's kind of new ground that's being, explored here. I do completely agree with the colonel. I mean, this is a photo opportunity for Hamas. This is an asymmetric tactic. Hostage taking is a tried and true tactic for terrorist organizations. They're doing this to buy time. They're doing this for propaganda. They're not doing this out of the goodness of their hearts. And I would be skeptical to think, much like Israel's putting out, that this will extend past the 4-day mark, because Hamas needs to buy time long past this week. There will be probably, after a little pause, another release of sick, elderly, wounded people, and then, we'll continue to move through the process. But for the IDF soldiers, this could be a long struggle if they're hostages.
Colonel, I'm just wondering your thoughts. So Hamas on the 7th of October carries out this horrendous massacre in Israel. More than 1,200 men, women, and children killed. The 3-year-old little girl among so many other people taken from their homes and shipped over to Gaza. So they do that. They film that. And now they're getting those hostages back to Israel, and they're in turn, as you just mentioned, getting 150 people, and we're talking about women, and when they're saying children, many of them are 17 and 18-year-olds who have been involved in other things inside either Israel or the West Bank. Is Hamas getting everything they planned for?
Probably the biggest question you could ask, Jose, is what were they planning for? But in this case, I'm going to look at them as a terror hybrid organization. They never told us that they took women and children. What they've been telling themselves, what they've been saying in Arabic, what they've been saying to the Muslim world is that they took soldiers, that this was a military attack. When we see children coming over tomorrow, for the first time, that will be them actually acknowledging that they did take them. They're trying to put it in a moral equivalency, which I abhor. It is horrible. What are you saying? What am I saying? Women and children, women and children. No. The women who were arrested in Israel, The minors who were arrested in Israel, who did attacks and terror attacks and participated, and they were arrested and they were put on trial and they were sentenced and they were put in jail in response for the horrific attack of October 7th when people were taken. And I just want to add in that there are 2 children there, that their parents were murdered in front of them and they were taken. And what do you say to these 2 little kids when they come back? How do you even start that conversation? So this whole aspect of what Hamas is doing, they're doing what terror organizations do. It is the reason that hostage taking for them is a modus operandi that they like. It is the reason that we need to defend ourselves against such a way. It is absolutely horrible.
So important to clarify issues like this. Colonel, back to my question. So in a way, in their warped logic, this is part of what they want.
So you put before, and in the slide, and you said it was written that they're going to let out women and children, and you wrote in the slide 150 prisoners, and after you wrote the 150 prisoners, you said women and children. For me, I want to say very clearly, 150 sentenced women and minors who did terror attacks are being let out because we need to bring home the women and children. It's very tough to do so, most definitely in the broader sense, let alone in what we're just going to call the popular world. Hamas have made an enormous impact in presenting their narrative, and we try and battle it every single day, but it is absolutely challenging every single day. Yes, they're doing too well as far as I'm concerned, Jose.
Yeah, and I just want to bring up that we just were told that the Prime Minister of Israel, Benjamin Netanyahu, his office is saying that he will be holding a press conference at 9:15 local times. That's 2:15 Eastern time today. We will, of course, be monitoring that. But, Chris, I'm just wondering, so of these innocent people that are going to be starting to be released from Hamas control back to Israel, what kind of information is Israel going to be able to learn from them?
Well, there's going to be great intelligence, hopefully, that comes out of it. Now, taking into consideration, many of these are children, but what will happen first is they will be put into a reintegration process where they will be medically assessed and then psychologically assessed to make sure that they're in a condition that they can be then debriefed. What will happen then is the conditions of their confine, where they were held, how they were fed, who they were held with, who were the guards, description of the guards, their uniforms. So maybe we can tie that to a specific unit in Hamas. Were they moved around? Any piece of information that can corroborate existing information that's already held by Israel and the international partners, or start a new line of collection where we can start refining where they may be. These negotiations also help us gather information on what's going on with the hostages. Further, the Red Cross is reportedly going to get some access to the remaining hostages, so that maybe will give us identification and conditions of the health of the hostages remaining in custody. And I'll just piggyback off what the Colonel says. Also, this tactic is modus operandi for Hamas. Palestinian groups have been doing it for years. Terrorism, unfortunately, works for them. One only has to look back to the 1972 massacre in Munich, and shortly 2 years after, Yasser Arafat was speaking on the floor of the UN General Assembly. So they know that. They know they can buy time. They know this is dynamic that works in their favor because this global support for Israel might wane over time.
Colonel Miri Eisin and Christopher O'Leary, thank you both for being with us today. I really appreciate it.